Hi guys, welcome back to the Open Minds podcast. I'm your host Viki and I'm here to get you thinking differently. Today we are joined again by my beautiful friend Rani, and coming back the last episode that we just had, which was talking a lot about NLP, we wanted to talk about something that I feel like we've both had a bit of experience in, but maybe more so Rani. And we wanted to talk about body image, eating disorders, and the way that Rani has used NLP to kind of overcome it. And I think it's really important to talk about these topics because it's something that a lot of people face, especially during their teenage / 20s. And it's just something that we're constantly battling with media, social media, and even now just brands and clothing sizes, and it's just always in our face. But I'm going to pass it over to Rani. Hi, Rani.
Hello again. It's me. I really love this topic. So I'll dive back to the start. I guess for me, growing up, like I said in the earlier podcast, that I was always super sporty, so I could typically always eat what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really had an issue with body image.
And I think when you're younger, you just eat whatever you want.
You don't care.
You
don't care. And because I was so active, my physique never really changed, and it didn't really start to affect me, honestly, until I got into my later years of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say this probably didn't really start to affect me until year 11 and year 12. So right before you're about to graduate, and then in my my late teenage years and then my early 20s, where I was surrounded by in high school girls that were a lot more petite, and because I was always super sporty, I was typically surrounded by sporty people. So we all kind of had similar-ish body shapes. However, when I moved high schools in year 11, I moved to a brand new school, and the girls that I was started to become friends with, some of them were quite skinny, and I just remember being fuck, why don't I look like them? And I was full comparing. A lot of comparison happened in those years of my life. And I remember asking some of them like how do you look that way? Because I just assumed that everyone's body's the same, right? And we should all look the same and la la la. And I remember the response was, oh, I just don't eat. Or I don't eat a lot. And I remember I got introduced to MyFitnessPal when I was 16. And I had no idea how to fucking use it. Which I'm actually really glad that I didn't know how to use it. I knew how to scan the barcode, but that was about it.
Yeah.
And I remember asking my friend, what does she eat? And it was a lot of soups. It was no carbs in her diet. And
Which is wild. You're talking about high school.
I'm talking about high school.
You're talking about under 18.
I'm talking, I was 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, yeah, it was mainly soups and stuff that we spoke about. And I remember watching them and they wouldn't have a lot of food. They wouldn't really eat. And my God, I can eat.
Yeah.
And before going to that school, I used to eat and not have a problem and would never be worried about people watching me eat. But then the second I transitioned to this school, something flicked, because I was surrounded by more petite women or girls, and seeing that, being oh, well, they don't eat, so I shouldn't eat. And I literally would be physically, I'd feel sick.
Yeah.
Because I was so hungry. But I'm but they look the way they do because they don't do this. So I shouldn't do that too then.
Yeah. And I think you think oh, well, if they can get through the day without eating, I can too. I just need to set my mind to it.
Yeah. And obviously something that I didn't really take into consideration was that I was super sporty and some of them weren't. I was playing, netball a few hours after school.
Your energy output is
higher.
Yeah.
And I was didn't register, again, I didn't have any education really around it. And I had done health in high school, so I understood nutrition. However, just because I understood it doesn't mean that I was actually doing it. I didn't make sense that I was supposed to have protein in my 3 main meals. I wasn't having a lot of protein. My diet was predominantly carbs and fats. However, it wasn't even, it wasn't really carbs there for a while. No, it was not nutritious at all, and it wasn't a lot of food. And basically by the time I got to year 12, I didn't like who I was becoming hanging around these people. So I basically stepped away, and I was kind of a lone wolf in year 12, and I just wanted to fucking finish it and get the fuck out of there. And I guess my eating kind of got better because
Did you do anything to make it better? Or
no, I think because I was hanging around by myself, I didn't have a problem with eating by myself. But however, when I would go to friends' houses and stuff, I would notice that if I was drinking, I would I wouldn't usually eat a lot before I would drink, so then I could get like smashed.
As you do when you're like that age.
When you're that age, yeah. And then sometimes when I go to friends' houses, if there was food that I didn't have at my house, for example, my house had a lot of whole foods, really nutritious food, which is beautiful and amazing for your body. However, when you're kind of growing up and stuff, you want to have sugar. Like kids want to have sugar. And I remember when I would go to kids' houses or friends' houses that like they would have sugar, and like I would be honestly, mate, I could smash like a freaking like row of like Tim Tams or like mint slices. I had no problem smashing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where it started back then, because it was like restriction. I guess I wasn't never allowed to have it. And it's like when someone says to you, if I said to you right now, I want you to think of a blue tree, what do you think of?
Blue tree. Yeah.
So it's like if someone says, don't eat that, I'm going to want to eat it.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to want to eat it. So I think because I had restriction around food that was like chocolates and like more processed foods, I'm not going to use the word junk food because I don't believe in that, but I'll say processed foods, that when I would have the option, I would eat a lot of it because I never had that opportunity at my house where I was majority of the time. So I think it kind of started when I was a bit younger, like maybe 11, 12, 13. That's kind of when I noticed it. And it might have started earlier than that.
But did you enjoy the foods that you were eating?
Yeah. So the food that I had, like that my parents gave me, like was great. However, I still wanted the sweet stuff because like I wasn't allowed to have it. And then again, year 12, I hadn't noticed as much. However, when I got to graduation, I had left. So I got to finish early because I didn't do exams.
Yeah.
And I just, this is like such a fucked thought that I had. I remember being like, I want to come back to graduation and I want people to be like, wow, like she looks hot. And I lost.
And your definition of hot was like skinny.
Yep, that was my definition. And the beauty standard that I thought that I'd placed on myself was that you have to be a size XYZ to be attractive, for people to be attracted to you, for people to love you. Like, and it was this fucked belief. Like, again, that became down to my subconscious value of, I don't believe that people will love me, or I don't believe I'll get a partner if I'm not skinny.
But I think that also is the media playing into it. Like I grew up with a lot of like magazines and you'd see these girls who were like stick thin, like size 6s, size 4s even. Like you could see their like rib cage and like all the bones sticking out, and that was like the celebrities that you would look up to. And it would just like, that was the standard that was set for media. And even now when you go on Instagram, a lot of like the influencers and the models that you see are all size 6s. And so that's what you're bombarded with, and that's what it's easy to think that I need to be like this.
I definitely think that now it's changing. I definitely think there's more like influencers that are like plus sizes or are of a bigger body type, which I think is great.
But not even just plus size, like someone that's like a 10 or a 12 or a 14. Like.
Do you know what? I remember, I actually forgot about this. I applied for this modelling agency when I was younger. So I probably was like 10. So obviously my mum had to do it for me. And I've always been quite pretty. And as I've gotten older, I've done a lot of modelling for like makeup artists and hairdressers. Like I've done quite a lot. If you go on my Instagram, you look at my tagged, there's a whole heap there. And prior to that, I really wanted to go into sports modelling when I was younger. So I remember we applied and I was probably like maybe a size 8 at this point. Like I was still like young.
Yeah.
However, I've always been quite like broad through my shoulders. Like I just have an athlete's body. Like that's just my body type. And I love my body now. However, back then and as a kid, like I didn't see anything wrong with it. I was like, oh yeah, cool. Like I would fit the sport type. I knew that I was too big, that I wouldn't fit like a bikini model or something like that. I wasn't going to suit that. And I remember them coming back to my mum being like, she's too big. And I actually had forgotten about it. I remember we did some work, we did NLP work, and I remember it came up in it. And I couldn't believe that. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And obviously I've remembered that now to talk about it. And I believe too that probably really obviously damaged me thinking like growing up as like, what, to be a model, to be beautiful, to be seen as pretty and rah, I have to be a certain size. And basically what I did in year 12, like I'm not condoning this at all, like not at all. I didn't understand. Basically I put myself into a deficit. However, I was just like starving myself. Like I was barely eating and it was like fucked. Like I can get dizzy spells, like, but I was so determined. Like I was like, I'm going to prove these fuckers wrong. And like no one, literally, but who am I proving wrong?
Yeah.
I'm just proving to myself. Like,
but it's also like, no one said to you,
this is the thing.
Hey, Rani, you need to lose all this weight.
No. So it's a narrative that I've created in myself to feed the narrative of I need to look a certain way to be loved or to get attention.
Or if I am this way, then I'll be happy with myself.
Yeah. It's always like, when I do this, I'll be happy. When I get this thing, I'll be happy. And you got it. You're satisfied? For me, back then in the past, like, I would get something and I would achieve something, like, yep, sick, next thing. And I would never actually be like, wow, like, I can't believe that I've actually done that thing. I would just like brush it off and be like, oh, next thing, like, what's the next best thing to do? And basically, like, I feel like I didn't really start to like notice that was wrong, because I was like, oh, well, this is must be how you lose weight. Because again, I chatted to people the year before and they'd said to lose weight, they just didn't eat.
Yeah.
So I've put 2 and 2 together, again, not knowing this is how you do it. And like, if you Google how to lose weight, it's like fucking lemon water, like intermittent fasting, all the bull. It's not how you do it. The only thing that like the intermittent fasting has in common with fat loss is a deficit. And when I say deficit, I mean you're creating a calorie deficit, therefore you're consuming less than what you're burning. And if you wanted to maintain your weight, you would roughly eat around the same food that you're burning total. So you have a thing called TDEE, so it's total daily energy expenditure, where it's not just like, for me, I used to think that I have to burn like the same amount of calories as what I was eating. So I'm like, but I'm only burning like 300 calories in this workout and I'm eating like 1,200 calories. Like, how does that work? But what I didn't know was the total daily amount. And you can only roughly kind of gauge that. And the way I would suggest working with a coach to do this efficiently. You can base that off like scale weight, so you can see what the scale weight's doing. If you wanted to maintain weight, you'd eat around the same as that. And then if you wanted to gain weight, you go into something called a calorie surplus. I hate the term cutting and bulking. I think it's like really dirty. And when I think of bulking, it just makes me feel like dirty and like you can just eat shit. When you say calorie surplus, it's like you're consuming more than what you're burning. However, you slowly increase this to increase muscle mass. And if you wanted to gain a bit of weight, obviously you're going to gain a bit of healthy body fat along the way. You can't gain weight and muscle without a bit of fat along the way. So basically, like I said, I created a calorie deficit, but it was not the right way to go about it whatsoever.
Like an unhealthy.
Yeah, like it was fucked. And then from there, like, I basically gained the weight back over the next few months, and I was kind of back to where I started. And I was like, oh shit, like, now what? And then I moved out of home. This is when I started my hairdressing apprenticeship. So this was my first time living out of home. And I didn't have anyone to tell me no. So basically I didn't understand.
You're doing your own groceries.
Everything was at my fingertips. Like, I could do anything I wanted to do, and it was really foreign to me. And my housemate at the time, she used to bodybuild, and she is very blessed with her physique, like, and her metabolism. She can pretty much eat anything, and body doesn't really change. So I would see her eating, like, she'd eat like tuna and rice, which looked disgusting. But like, she would eat like blocks of chocolate, so like ice cream, and she would look the same. And I'm like, well, if she does it, so can I. Again, not having the education. So I wasn't studying PT at this point. Again, having the thought process of everyone's the same, so if she does it, so can I. So again, in those, years of like, well, no one has taught me any different. So I've just taken what I've seen and gone, okay, well, these two things align. So I started, like, I guess, eating more chocolate and like ice cream and stuff, and I didn't really see anything wrong with it. However, I was doing it all the time. And I was doing it during the day. And then I remember, like, every time I get up, I would like go to the fridge.
It becomes a habit, right?
It was a habit. And I was like, again, didn't really see anything wrong with it yet. And then I just remember one day trying on my clothes for work, because obviously hairdressing and even being in the beauty industry, you wear clothes that, like, you wear jeans, you wear skirts, stuff like that. When you're PTing, it's like you wear activewear. So like stretchy. I don't have a problem with that. However, putting on clothes, I remember, like, they started to get more tight. And I remember one day my, like, Kukai pants, I love my Kukai pants, they wouldn't fit me. And I was like,
weird. Did they shrink? Like,
I was like, weird. Why don't they fit? I remember looking in the mirror, and I just remember I just remember looking at myself and like my skin like folding over the pants and like weren't doing up, and I just, like, my heart sunk. And I just remember being like, what the fuck? How did I get here? Because sometimes what happens is you become disassociated, where you your subconscious is running the show, which it is 90% of the time anyways. However, like, it is blocking you from feeling something and or taking your mind off external things that maybe you should be thinking about that you don't want to. And you become disassociated, and you kind of like just forget where you're at. Like, you don't really know what's happening. You're kind of living on airplane mode, where you're like, and then one day you become associated again, and you're like, what the fuck?
That was me after lockdown. So lockdown, obviously, You're at home all the time. I was like, you know how people went into their fitness phase? I was just lying on the couch all day being depressed that my business had shut down, having nothing to do and just watching TV and like snacking all day, every day. And we come out of lockdown and nothing fit me. Everything was so tight. None of my dresses would zip up. Like I had events to go to and I had nothing to wear. I had to buy new clothes. And that's like, because you're in your sweats all day, every day throughout lockdown, you don't notice it. And then I started noticing my underwear was getting tighter. Like, and that's when I was like, okay, like something needs to be done about this. But then you feel so crappy about your clothes not fitting.
I think for me, it was almost like I was emotionally hoarding these clothes and I was clinging onto them. It wasn't the clothes I was clinging onto. I was clinging onto my past self that looked like that. And I'm like, but I'll keep them because I will get like that.
Yeah.
I will get to that and then I can wear them again, right? And I really don't think that it's a great idea. I think that you should just buy new clothes that fit you. And that took me a long time to come to terms with.
Yeah.
And I remember at the salon, I would wear things that were more stretchy and more like coverage, and I would never want to buy new clothes because that meant I was acknowledging on a conscious level that I've gained weight. Even though I fucking knew that I had, but I didn't want to admit it because like buying new clothes and being bigger than a size 10 in my head was wrong at that point in my life. And now when it comes to sizes and shit, it does not matter. Just fucking get it if it fits. If it feels comfortable, get it. Like who cares? You go.
I also think like sizing is so whack these days.
Yeah.
Like
these jeans are a 16.
No way.
I'm not even joking. It's a 16, yeah.
I feel like you go from store to store, you could be like an 8 in one and a 14 in another. Or you're like a large in one like style. 3 weeks later you come back to the same store and the small is suddenly too big for you. Like I think there needs to be more regulation around sizing.
It's definitely weird. It's definitely odd. And I remember when I bought these jeans, so I bought these jeans this year, and I really needed new jeans. Like I didn't have any jeans that freaking fit me. And the initial trying the jeans on, there was no 12 and there was a 14. I was like, oh, it's probably going to be too big. The 14 was tight. So there's a dish. Dish, you have wax sizes, like let me tell you. And then I was like, that's tight. I was like, oh, but like, I was like, no, I'm going to get the 16 because it's going to feel more comfortable. Put it on, and I was like, what, does it actually mean anything about me by being a size 16? No, it doesn't, because in another fucking, like, clothing store, I'll be a size 10 or a 12 or an 8. Like,
it's literally
everything's so
just
different.
A tag.
Yeah, and it's really funny because I think when I was younger in the past, I used to really attach myself to, like, the size. And I'm like, when do I ever walk around being like, hey guys, I'm a size 16? Like, who fucking cares? Like, it doesn't mean actually anything about you. Like, it does not mean anything.
And I feel like you would buy, for me, it was always like the size 8. And I would make myself fit into the size 8 so I could be a size 8.
You know the saying, like, the clothes should fit you. You shouldn't fit the clothes. Is that the saying? The clothes should fit you. No.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I really agree with it. So that was like a big, I think, realization for me. And it was kind of around lockdown time. Again, I didn't have much to do. I could go for walks and stuff, but by this point the gyms were shut down and I was just eating my feelings all the time. And that was like the one thing that I could control. And it kind of got like worse and worse throughout COVID. And then when I moved back home to live with my parents while COVID was happening, got a bit better because they could kind of like see what I was eating. And again, it was kind of unhealthy. Like I didn't starve myself, but I wasn't eating enough. And that was a whole thing. So I lost weight. Then we came out of lockdown, gained the weight, lost weight, gained the weight. And it got to a point where I was eating like 1,000 calories a day, which is like, fuck, what a toddler eats. Like it's nothing. And I was constantly hungry, but I'm like, but this is how I lose weight. Like, and then that's kind of around the time where I started to study PT. PT goes a bit into nutrition, but it's really not that much. I probably have the most amount of education around nutrition from other coaches or like seminars that I've been to, which I'm really grateful for. And if you're interested in nutrition, I would definitely recommend outsourcing. Don't fucking just Google it. Like actually do something about it or talk to a coach or something about it.
Because there's so many courses available as well.
There is a lot of courses available and there's even in-person seminars, like probably not now because it's towards the back end of the year, but coming into the new year, there definitely is courses and, you know, learning about certain types of foods for certain types of people. If you're intolerant, how can you juggle that? All that sort of stuff. And it was around the time where I saw the psychic where I was just like still eating my feelings. Like I was just I remember.
Did you realize that that's what you were doing?
No. I just knew that my thing that I knew that I was doing was I was filling a void. What that void was, I did not know.
Yeah.
And I thought, is it because I feel unfulfilled? Is it because I feel lost? So that's kind of how I found the psychic. And she was the one who brought up the eating disorder to me. And I actually had got an appointment with a psychiatrist because I had to go see a GP for a mental health plan because it was getting to a point where
You were really struggling.
I had trigger warning. I had like suicidal thoughts, which I actually now know, being in the mental health industry, suicidal thoughts are actually pretty common. It's when you action it. It's when you try and take action. That's not normal. That's very abnormal, and please seek help. However, I just remember driving along the Westgate one time and my friend was in the car with me. I'm going to laugh. It's not a laughing matter, but it was funny at the time.
Yeah.
And I was just driving and I was like, do you ever just want to do you ever want to drive off? Like, do you ever just want to turn? And I didn't turn the wheel, but I was like, do you ever just want to do it? She's like, she looked at me and she's like, no. And I was like, okay. And then I just remember start crying and I was like, oh my God, something is wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I now know nothing's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with me. And I didn't need to be fixed. However, I just needed guidance. And basically I had booked a psychiatrist appointment to go talk to them about what was going on. And then Julie, the psychic, has now been potentially something to do with eating disorders. And I was like, okay, cool. Definitely come at a good time that I was going to talk to them the next week. And I'm in the psychiatry room with this older lady and she gives me this piece of paper. And she explained, I explained to her what's going on. I was like, I'm just trying to fill this void. I don't know what's happening. I just, before I know it, the food's just in my mouth. I'm just eating it. And
then you've got one Tim Tam, and then all the Tim Tams are gone.
And then I've got the tub of ice cream. It was connoisseur's cookies and cream. That was my go-to. It was good. And I remember she gave me this piece of paper and it said binge eating disorder at the top, and it was a questionnaire. And it was ask me questions, and it was sometimes, often, always.
Yeah.
And I ticked always for all of them. And I just remember looking at it going fuck, okay, I've got an eating disorder. And I give back to her. She goes, yep, so you've got binge eating disorder. And I was like, okay, now what the fuck do I do? And so she's like, I'm going to prescribe you some tablets. Oh. Yeah, to suppress your appetite. So this is where I have an issue with the medical industry, to suppress your appetite. And I'm also going to recommend you talk to a psychologist. And I was like, okay, cool. Gives me the pain medication. She tells me the pre-warnings. Because I obviously have to go get it from the chemist. And they're like, yep, sometimes you might feel drowsy, sometimes you might feel nauseous. And when I took it, I felt so nauseous. However, I was like, but this is helping me. These tablets are helping me. It's going to fix me. And I remember I talked to the psychologist, and I mean, kind of served its purpose. Look, everything in my life has served a purpose. However, it just brought my problems or my traumas, or whatever you want to call it, to my awareness. However, there was no actionable steps given to me as to how can I move through it. And because they're always so booked out and they had a backlog from COVID, I'm pretty sure I talked to a girl that I know and she was saying it still takes 2-3 months for her to get in to see her psychologist. And I'm like, fucking hell, that's actually a long time that you have to wait in between seeing them. So I had to wait maybe every 2 months or once a month that I would see her. And a lot of things can happen during that time. If you have a slip up and you beat yourself up over it, you want to talk about it now. You don't want to wait 2 months to talk about it, and then you maybe have forgotten about it, or you've suppressed
it. Feeling it
or you've suppressed it, and you're like, cool, I don't need to talk about that thing because it's whatever, it's done. So then after that, didn't really work. I just stopped going. I didn't enjoy it. And I kind of I thought I got my eating under control because I started working with a coach, and he actually did mindset work. He wasn't, I don't think he was qualified in NLP, but he did mindset work. And the only reason that I went to him actually was because he was coaching this girl who was bodybuilding. And at this point in my life, I was like, oh, bodybuild, I'll do that. And that was just another fat loss thing for me. However, at the time, I didn't recognize it. Now I have the awareness and I recognize it for what it is. And I remember him talking to me about it and him asking me questions, and he was really helpful. And however, I kind of just jumped into dieting phases though when I had an eating disorder, which you should not be doing. You should be at maintenance while you're sorting out what's going on in your head. And he was helpful because he gave me awareness around stuff. However, once our 12 weeks was done, I left, signed up with another coach. Again, fat loss. It was constant fat loss, and this is actually something I'm going to be talking to on my podcast as well. It's it was constantly I'd binge, but then I would go back, but then I still hadn't dealt with what the fuck, why am I doing it? For what purpose am I doing it? And
because you're not finding the root cause of
no,
it.
No, because it was I still have a void, but what is that void? And I had awareness around the fact that it would get triggered when I would have an argument. And then I had awareness around the fact that it would be a lot around men. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
men are the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because during that time when I was binging, I was on dating apps. Like, I had one night stands. I call myself out. Like, I had one night stands. I had fun. However, I was left every time, right? Because they just wanted one thing, and I was giving it to them, and I didn't think I deserved any better at all. That was my belief. Like, my subconscious belief was that I don't deserve to be treated any better, and I deserve to be abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept attracting it because I was like, men are bad. Oh, another man.
And it's also
Same
like
thing.
what you're comfortable with, right? It's
Yep.
like even though it's toxic, it's what you're used to. And
Yeah.
I feel like your body and your brain crave familiarity.
Yeah.
And so it keeps going towards that.
So your heart runs towards pleasure and away from pain.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that's painful, it might not be painful enough because your heart is like, oh man, they could change. Or like, I still love them. So it's always going to run towards pleasure, or if you have the best sex ever.
Yeah.
Run towards the pleasure, away from the pain. So when you like leave challenging things like that, it's like you feel like you're going against what you're supposed to do even when you know it's right. So then basically I got referred. I got referred. I asked for a referral from my friend about this. He was like a psychologist and he did hypnosis. And I was like, oh, hypnosis, that sounds kind of cool. And it was for my friend though. And I was like, oh, but he does his first session free. That sounds pretty cool. Like maybe I'll go and like talk to him. And I went. He's super spiritual. I fucking love Ricky. I love you. He is called Melbourne City Psychologist? Hypnotherapy. Okay, Melbourne City Hypnotherapy. He's in Maribyrnong. If you're in Melbourne, highly recommend. Ricky's really great. And he helped me kind of uncover like why, like for what purpose was I doing that? And we did like hypnosis, and it took me back to times in my life where there were unresolved things and I needed to resolve them. So that was really awesome. And he gave me more awareness around, I guess, like me thinking that it was still coming from like the abandonment. So that's where I thought it was coming from. And I noticed that when my ex-partner and I would have an argument, he would never, ever threaten to leave, ever. However, I'd be like, oh, he's going to leave. If an argument, he's going to leave. And then I would use food to deal with that. So it was like to deal with the emotion of like, am I going to be left? It was the fear, right? And then it wasn't until I started working with my coach, my mentor now, Elise, who does NLP, did I start to have a lot of awareness. And one day it just clicked. And I was like, I was running away from myself. I had no relationship to myself at all. I was not in touch with myself at all. And it's really interesting. I had a conversation this week about it, and I asked a client, where are you not giving yourself attention? She's like, what do you mean? I'm with myself all the time. I said, yeah. And is it conscious attention though? Like, do you actually just sit with yourself and just go, how are you feeling? Like, literally sit with yourself and just ask yourself questions. Or like when you're in the mirror, like, do you say positive things? Are you actually being present, or do you look at yourself quickly and look away? She's like, no, I don't like what I say. I don't want to look at it. Or, you know, when you have a shower, are you like actually feeling like your skin? Are you actually feeling how you feel in your body? Or you just like, got to do this quickly, got to get out. Or if you're standing naked, like this was a big one. When you like look at yourself when you're naked, or even with a partner, especially in the bedroom, like do you just want to have sex quickly and get out? Or are you comfortable just like laying there and feeling comfortable in your body? So it's like
when you like right after you have sex, it's like I gotta put my clothes back on.
Yeah. So it's like it's very different in my opinion, like conscious attention to yourself versus like you just walking around, because like, yeah, sure, you give yourself attention because you're doing things with yourself, but it's like the intention behind it, what is that? So when I, like I said, started doing NLP, I just had that light bulb moment of, oh my God, I don't know who I am. And that's what I was running away from. That when it was quiet, when there was no noise in my head, and when I was doing, no one else was around me, when it was just me and myself, I was like, what do I like to do? And I almost had like this identity crisis, because I was like, what the fuck? What do I like to do? Who am I? And that's where I like started to, you know, have questions in my past relationship about it started, who am I in this relationship? And then I really registered, that's not the question I should be asking. The question I should be asking is, who am I in general? Because I didn't know. And what's great, even if you're listening to this and you're like, fuck, I actually don't know. What's great is you get to create her or him. Or they, them. Well, whatever your pronouns are. You get to create yourself. You get to choose who she is, who you are. You get to choose. Like, so for me, it was like I got to choose who I am. I got to pick what I like to do. Like, you get to pick. And that's
you
what
create your own
you
story,
do.
right?
And so through that, then when I made the hardest choice probably of my life, and going against the grain, if our heart runs towards pleasure and away from pain, when I left my ex-partner, that was painful. And if men, and it was right after this that I had the light bulb moment, if men was the trigger, then is that not the time where I've just abandoned myself and pushed him away? Is that not the time where I should most feel triggered and most want to binge? However, it wasn't. Like, the initial thought was there for comfort. However, I was like, no, I just need to feel my feelings, and I was actually fine. And it was really interesting, and that's when I had the light bulb moment, and I was like, it was never about the men. It was always about me and not knowing who I am and not giving myself attention and love, because I had no self-love really and like no self-worth. That's why before my ex, that's why I was attracting really shit men, and I didn't have self-love. And that's a bit of a problem when you're in a relationship, because you're looking for that externally. And it's like they can only give you so much. So you need to start giving yourself some. So that was kind of like how NLP, it was through so many different things in NLP and so many different strategies that we use that I was able to have that realization. And what is so beautiful about NLP is that we bring awareness as a coach to the table. However, you have the realization. It's not for me to tell you they're this. And like some...
So after you had that realization, what did you do to then change your mindset on food and on body
Straight
image?
away, I told my coach, and she's like, yeah, I knew. And like, this is what I mean. Like, so people know.
Yeah.
They know, but like, even with my clients, I know things, but it's not to me to say anything. Like, you need to figure it out on your own. Yeah.
But you can't.
Yeah. So I guess once that kind of happened, it was building a lot of self-trust around like, can I have this piece of chocolate and be okay? And like, still now, like, I don't need to have a block of chocolate in my house because like, I just don't need to. So like, if I want to have chocolate or something, I'll just like go get like the single serve.
Yeah.
And I still think that's actually a really good idea for like people in general. Like, you know, rather than getting a tub of ice cream, why don't you get like the sticks instead? So then it's like a serving size rather than you can constantly like keep adding more. And I also realized I had this recognition of you are what you eat. And I was filling myself full of really processed foods and like foods that did not make me feel good in my body.
And you don't realize that you're not feeling good until you start to balance out your diet and you're like, oh, this is what it feels like.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you start to eat like whole foods and like foods that are actually good and nutritious for your body. Do you actually have the recognition of, like you just said, oh, I feel really good. Like, I don't feel sick. I don't feel bloated. I don't feel sluggish. I don't feel tired. This is different.
Yeah.
And that's actually how you're supposed to feel. You're not supposed to feel constantly bloated. You're not supposed to feel like lethargic all the time. You're not supposed to have highs and crashes. Like, that's not what it's supposed to feel like. So I already obviously had the background in nutrition from PT, so I already understood that. However, it was like the recognition of when I eat, like for me, when I was binging, it was like I wasn't treating myself nicely. So it registered to me, it wasn't necessarily just about it was never really about the food. It was about how I was treating myself. And I think that like, whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's an addiction, whether it's like drugs, sex, alcohol, whatever I truly believe that what are you masking? Because you can actually have a really fantastic life without any of those things. And like, sure, you can have those things, you know, every now and then. However, like, you don't need to have it all the time. And like, especially if I look at alcohol, like, for me, in my high school years, like, I would drink all the time to feel like I'd fit in and to feel comfortable. And it was like, it was to make me more relaxed, to therefore, like, say what I wanted to say and be who I wanted to be, because I didn't have the confidence without it yet to be able to stand up for myself and say what I actually wanted to say. So I've been sober since like January, and like, for me, that's great. And some people, you know, want to have a social drink, and that's also great. And I'm sure that I might. However, the thing with alcohol is I don't enjoy it. And because for me, for a really long time, that it was for not the right reasons, that I knew when I decided to stop drinking that I would kind of get tested with some things, or I think it's a universal test. Like, I was on a yacht earlier this year with some really well-known like entrepreneurs or like influencers, and they were all drinking, and it was free alcohol for some of it. And for me, I was like, oh, do I have a drink to feel comfortable? And I was like, oh,
to feel
test.
like you're fitting in.
Yeah, massive test. And it's like, I can actually just have all these conversations sober. And so for me, like, I think that you can enjoy these things in moderation. However, just note, when you reach for it, for what purpose are you reaching for it? Is it to mask something, or is it just like, oh, it's just a celebration? And can you celebrate without that thing? Because do you need it? Do you need to have a drink every single time something good happens for you? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you feel like if someone is feeling like they're struggling with their food and struggling with their body image, that's something that you could help coach them through?
Yeah, definitely. So I got very, very clear on my client avatar this week as to who I want my dream client to be. So people who are struggling with toxic relationships, who they constantly bring in people that treat them badly and yet they still get it
Let them
every
in,
single
yeah.
time. And they're like, but why do I keep doing it? It's not me. Hate to break it to you, it is you.
Yep.
And that's fine and that's perfect. And I know it can feel shit to first hear it, but that's definitely something I'm really interested in helping people with, especially food, especially body image. Even people who are getting constantly injured or sick, that is a massive mental thing as well. But definitely the food and the body image, like I have been you. Whether you're under eating or you're overeating, like I've been you. And if I can get through it, so can you. And I promise you that you can do all these things and feel all these really great emotions and feel fulfilled and feel sexy and feel beautiful and fucking love yourself without eating, like binging or starving yourself. You don't need to do that.
And what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
So the same as last time. So via Instagram. So my handle is the .Rani Curry. So Rani and then curry spelt like the food. I know my name is really fun. And then you can send me a DM and or there's a link in my bio. If you click on the link, it'll say a free discovery call. So you can feel free to book that in as well. And in that, you can just write a note down what's coming up for you or you can just wait to talk to me. So it is a Zoom call as well. So we can just chat about all the things that are coming up for you and how I can help.
Well, thank you for coming on and thank you for being so raw and open with us. And we will see you guys next time, hopefully. I'm hoping that Rani can come on the podcast again because I've enjoyed talking to her so much. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please like, share, subscribe, and we will chat next time. Bye.
Bye.